September 2024, Norwegian police arrest a man in Norway. His name is Ayabacho Lucas. To most people, he's nobody, but to hundreds of thousands of people, 6,000 kilometers away, he is the leader of a separatist movement, the Ambazonia Government Council, whose armed wing is the Ambazonia Defense Forces, a country that doesn't officially exist. This arrest should have made international headlines, but it didn't, because the war Lucas has been fighting is one the world has chosen to ignore. We are talking about Cameroon, a country that was once called Africa's peace haven for avoiding the ethnic conflicts and civil wars that consumed its neighbors. Well, if you look at Cameroon today, peace is the last word anyone would use. Every Monday, entire cities shut down, markets close, roads empty, transportation stops. But this isn't a government lockdown. This is enforcement by armed separatists who burn vehicles that dare to move, who touch businesses that dare to open. They call it Ghost Town Monday. It's been happening for over 7 years. In the forests of Cameroon's northwest and southwest regions, armed groups control entire territories. They collect taxes, they run checkpoints, they enforce their own laws. The government calls them terrorists. They call themselves liberation fighters, and caught between them are millions of ordinary people who just want to survive. Now, the question everyone should be asking is quite simple. How did we get here? How did Cameroon, a country that seemed stable, that seemed peaceful, tear itself apart in such manner? Well, the answer is not quite simple, but it starts with a lie that was told 63 years ago. A lie about freedom, a lie about choice, and that lie created the conditions for everything that followed. So this is the story of a collapsing nation, but more importantly, it is a story of what happens when you deny people their identity for 6 decades and expect them to stay silent. To understand this war, we need to go back to 1919. World War I has just ended. Germany has lost, and one of the spoils of that war is a German colony in Central Africa called Cameroon. The victorious powers, Britain and France, they carve it up between themselves. France takes 80%, Britain takes 20%. But here's the critical detail that determines everything that follows. Britain doesn't administer its portion as a separate colony. Instead, it attaches southern Cameroon to Nigeria and runs it as an extension of Nigerian colonial administration for the next 45 years. This matters because for nearly half a century, Southern Cameroon develops its institutions as part of the British Nigerian system. English becomes the language of government and education. British common law becomes the legal system. The O-level and A-level examination systems becomes the standard for schools. An entire generation grows up with British institutional culture embedded in their society. Meanwhile, across the borders, French Cameroon develops completely differently. French becomes the official language. The French civil law system governs the courts. The French baccalaureate system structures education. Two populations living side by side, developing entirely different institutional identities. Then comes 1960. France grants independence to its portion, which becomes the Republic of Cameroon. Britain's southern Cameroon is left in limbo, and the United Nations has to decide what happens next. February 11, 1961, the UN organizes a plebiscite, that is a referendum to determine Southern Cameroon's future. On paper, it looks democratic. The people get to vote, they get to choose their destiny. But here's the problem now. They don't actually get to choose. The ballot offers just 2 options. Option 1, join the Independent Federation of Nigeria. Option 2, join the Independent Republic of Cameroon. Notice what's missing? Full independence. Despite the stated goal of UN trusteeship was to prepare territories for self-government, Southern Cameroon is denied the right to choose sovereignty. But why, you might wonder? The official reasoning is that Southern Cameroon is too small, too economically weak to survive on its own. British representatives at the UN argue against offering independence as an option. African delegations agree. Even some Southern Cameroonian politicians accept this logic. Then the vote happens. 233,571 people vote to join Cameroon, while 97,741 vote for Nigeria. And so reunification wins with 70%. But hidden in those numbers is a geographic split that will matter much later. The Bamenda division votes overwhelmingly for Cameroon. The Kumba division votes for Nigeria. The population is divided from the very beginning, but the real problem isn't the vote itself, it is what happens after. In July 1961, the Fumban Constitutional Conference. This is supposed to be where Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon negotiate the terms of their union as equals. The UN has mandated that a federal arrangement be established with both territories having equal status. Southern Cameroon's delegates arrive expecting negotiation, but what they get is something called fait accompli, an irreversible action or decision made by people that forces a situation or status quo, often done without prior consultation. You see, President Amadou Ahidjo of Cameroon has already drafted a federal constitution. He presents it at Fumban without waiting for preliminary agreements. So the conference proceeds without UN observers who boycott in protest. Britain, that is the administrating authority mandated to represent UN interests, refuses to attend. The constitution Ahidjo presents centralizes enormous power in the federal presidency: defense, foreign affairs, currency, immigration, higher education, telecommunications, all controlled by the federal government. Southern Cameroon gets limited autonomy over local matters, but whenever federal and state law conflict, federal law wins. The Southern Cameroonian delegates are negotiating from a position of weakness. They have no army, no international leverage, no real power. They extract what concessions they can. The federal structure itself is a concession. A promise that West Cameroon can keep its common law system, a guarantee that English language education will be preserved, and crucially, there was an article, Article 47 of the Constitution, states that the federal form of the state shall not be subject to any amendment. This provision is meant to be ironclad, a constitutional guarantee that the federation is permanent. But here's what never happens. No formal treaty of union is filed with the United Nations. The federal constitution is approved domestically, but the international treaty arrangement that UN Resolution 1608 contemplated never really materializes. This legal vacuum will become critical decades later. For Southern Cameroonians who opposed reunification, Fumban confirmed their worst fears. They had traded British colonialism for what they saw as French Cameroonian domination. But for those who supported reunification, there was still hope. The Federation, however imperfect, provided legal protection for Anglophone institutions and identity. Well, that hope would last exactly 11 years. May 20th, 1972, President Ahidjo announces a referendum. The question on the ballot was, do you approve of the United Republic of Cameroon? The results, according to the government, is 99.9% approval. This number isn't just statistically implausible, it is a confession. What this referendum does is abolish the federal structure entirely. The federation that was negotiated at Fumban, that was supposed to protect Anglophone autonomy, is dissolved by presidential decree. West Cameroon is divided into two provinces, Northwest and Southwest, each placed under governors appointed by the president in Yaoundé. Here is the constitutional problem. Article 47 already prohibited this. The federal structure was not supposed to be subject to amendment, but Ahidjo proceeds anyway, using a rigged referendum to legitimize what is, in substance, a constitutional coup. For Anglophone Cameroonians, this is the moment the promise of equal partnership dies. The federation that was supposed to guarantee their institutional distinctiveness has been unilaterally abolished. And there's nothing they can do about it at this point. But this erosion doesn't stop there. Over the next 4 decades, the government systematically dismantles every institution that makes Anglophone Cameroon distinct. Start with the legal system. Cameroon, you see, operates two fundamentally incompatible legal traditions. Anglophone regions inherited British common law, a system based on judicial precedent, oral argument, and case-by-case reasoning. Francophone regions, on the other hand, inherited French civil law, a system based on comprehensive written codes and inquisitorial procedure. After 1972, the government begins a process it calls harmonization, but harmonization only goes one direction. Civil law judges are deployed to preside over cases in common law courts. These judges have been trained exclusively in French legal methodology. Many don't even speak fluent English. They don't understand the principle of precedent. They don't understand common law procedure. Anglophone lawyers find themselves presenting cases based on common law authorities to judges who literally cannot comprehend the legal framework. Appeals from Anglophone courts go to the Supreme Court in Yaoundé, which is staffed overwhelmingly by Francophone judges. Cases languish on the docket for years. In one alleged instance, a case waited 34 years without a decision. This is the systematic destruction of a legal system. The same pattern repeats in education. Anglophone schools operated on the British O-level and A-level examination system, a curriculum emphasizing practical skills and broad competency across subjects. But the government begins deploying Francophone teachers to Anglophone schools, teachers who can speak fluent English. At the University of Buea and the University of Bamenda, institutions created to serve Anglophone students, the majority of teaching and administrative staff become Francophone. Lectures happen in broken English mixed with French. The educational chaos is documented in declining student performance. Then there is the civil service. Anglophones, who make up roughly a fifth of the country, are consistently underrepresented in the magistracy and senior civil service roles, especially in ministries like justice and defense. Across every ministry, defense, finance, territorial administration, foreign affairs, the pattern is identical. Anglophones can advance to middle management, but there is a glass ceiling. The highest positions remain closed. And finally, we have the resources. A large share of Cameroon's offshore oil is located off the Anglophone coast, especially in the India division. But oil revenues don't stay in Anglophone regions. They are transferred to the Federal Treasury in Yaoundé and redistributed according to government priorities. Anglophone communities bear the environmental costs of oil extraction while receiving minimal reinvestment for 44 years. This architecture operates. Anglophone professionals are educated, qualified, competent, but they hit barriers that Francophone colleagues never face. Anglophone students are taught by teachers who can't speak their language. Anglophone lawyers present cases to judges who don't understand their legal system. Anglophone communities sit on oil wealth that enriches everyone but them. This isn't neglect, this is the design. And by 2016, the pressure has been building for decades. Then comes the spark. October 10, 2016, Anglophone common law lawyers in Cameroon go on strike. They march through the streets of Bamenda, the regional capital of northwest Cameroon. They are wearing their black robes and white wigs, the traditional dress of British common law barristers, and they are holding signs. Their demands are specific: remove civil law judges from common law courts, create an autonomous common law bar association, establish a common law bench at the Supreme Court. From the distance, these aren't revolutionary demands. These are professional requests asking the government to honor its own constitution's promise of legal pluralism. But the government refuses to engage with the substance of the demands. Then, on November 21st, 2016, the teachers join. The Cameroon Teachers Trade Union and the Teachers Association of Cameroon call for strikes across Anglophone schools. And their demands mirror the lawyers. Remove Francophone teachers who can speak fluent English, restore the O-level, A-level curriculum, and end the imposition of Francophone methods and recruit sufficient Anglophone teachers. These were simple demands. Well, the government offers token concessions. They promise to recruit 1,000 bilingual teachers when tens of thousands are indeed needed. A promise to translate certain legal documents into English. The teachers' unions reject these inadequate offers and maintain their strike. Schools close, courts close. By December 2016, the institutional infrastructure of Anglophone Cameroon has ground to a halt. And then, the government makes a decision that transforms a professional strike into an independence movement. In late 2016, security forces fired on protesters, killing several people in Bamenda and other Anglophone towns. Over the following months, Human rights groups documented dozens of civilian deaths in the crackdown. Then came January 17, 2017. The government arrests leading civil society figures. They are transferred to Yaoundé and charged with terrorism. This carried a potential penalty of death. And on the same day, the government shut down internet access throughout the entire Anglophone region for about 3 months. Imagine living without the internet for 3 months. This internet blackout paralyzes everything. Students can't access research, business can't process transactions, journalists can't report, health workers can't coordinate. The entire Anglophone population, not just activists, everyone is collectively punished, and that's when the movement changes. By mid-2017, armed groups emerge. The Ambazonian Defense Forces, led by Ayabacho Lucas, the Southern Cameroon's Defense Forces, led by Ebenezer Akwanga, autonomous warlords who adopt names like General No Pity and Field Marshal. What started as lawyers asking for professional recognition has become an armed insurgency fighting for the independence of a self-declared republic of Ambazonia. The government had a choice in 2016. It could have engaged with narrow professional grievance through dialogue and reform. Instead, it chose arrest, killing, and collective punishment. And in doing so, it created the very separatist movement it now claims to be fighting.
We were mental slaves, but now is the time we are spiritually positive. And the fight is bigger than they can think. The fight is bigger than they can think.
Well, the war that follows isn't organized. It is chaos. The political wing of the separatist movement calls itself the interim government of Ambazonia. But there isn't just one interim government. There are 3. Sissoco Ayok Tabe, arrested in Nigeria in 2018 and sentenced to life imprisonment in Cameroon, claims to be president from his prison cell. Then there is Samuel Sako, based in the United States, claims to be acting president until he is impeached by his own cabinet in 2022. Marianta Njomia is then declared president by one faction while others refuse to recognize her authority. This leadership crisis makes peace negotiations nearly impossible. International mediators can't broker agreements when they don't know who speaks for the separatists. Switzerland tries to mediate in 2019. The effort collapses due to separatist infighting and government obstruction. Canada announces peace talks in January 2023. Within 48 hours, the Cameroon government categorically denies authorizing any negotiations. On the ground, armed groups operate with increasing autonomy. The Ambazonian Defense Forces become the most organized military wing with clear command structures and coordinated operations. But dozens of smaller militias control their own territories, led by commanders who answer to no political authority, and both sides commit atrocities. February 14, 2020, government forces and armed Fulani militia attacked the village of Ngabo. 21 civilians are killed, including 13 children and 1 pregnant woman. The government initially calls reports of the massacre fake news. Only after sustained international pressure does it admit liability. Villages suspected of harboring separatists are burned. Detainees in military facilities report systematic torture. But separatist groups are also responsible for horrific violence. October 24, 2020, armed gunmen attack Mother Francisca International Bilingual Academy in Kumba at noon. They kill 7 children aged 12 to 14 with machetes and guns. 13 others are injured. The identity of the perpetrators remain disputed, but the school had reportedly been making regular payments to separatists for safety. The economic collapse is catastrophic. The Cameroon Development Corporation, the largest private employer in the southwest region, sees banana production drop 95% between 2016 and 2020. Rubber production falls 83%. Thousands of workers lose their livelihoods. Markets can't function when Mondays are forcibly shut down. Supply chains disintegrate. Inflation spikes. Families that once earned modest incomes now struggle to afford 2 meals a day. And the education system simply stops. Over 600,000 children have been out of school for years. Schools are burned by both government forces and separatist groups. Separatists enforce school boycotts as part of their strategy to render Ambazonia ungovernable. An entire generation is growing up with severely limited educational opportunities, with literacy and numeracy skills that will affect their life prospects for decades. By 2024, the statistics are numbing. At least 6,000 civilians have been killed, with some estimates going much higher. Around 700,000 people have been displaced inside Cameroon's Anglophone regions, and Nigeria now hosts over 100,000 Cameroonian refugees. Food insecurity is also widespread. Malnutrition rates among children have increased significantly. The psychological trauma, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder will persist for generations. The question at the heart of this war isn't complicated at all. Can a union survive when it was built on broken promises? When one side was denied the right to choose sovereignty in 1961, when the federal protections negotiated at Fumban were unilaterally abolished in 1972, when 60 years of systematic marginalization in the legal system, in education, in the civil service, in resource distribution created institutional second-class citizenship for 20% of the population. Well, the Cameroon government would say yes, the territorial integrity is sacred, that separatism is terrorism, that reforms have been offered and rejected. Ambazonian independence advocates will say no, that this isn't secession but restoration of a sovereignty wrongfully surrendered under duress. That 60 years of oppression have proven that meaningful equality within Cameroon is impossible. That self-determination is a fundamental right, not a privilege granted by the state, and caught in the middle are millions of ordinary people who just want peace, who want their children in school, who want to work on Mondays, who want to live without fear that their village will be the next one burned, that their family will be the next one displaced. Or will this ever happen?